luxury, scandal, red carpets, and a dash of Italian flair. You might think you know this iconic brand. The leopard prints, the Sicilian widow dresses, the star-studded front rows. But behind the glitz and glamour lies a dark tale of controversy, fraud, and racism. From a small atelier in Milan to dressing the biggest names in Hollywood, their journey is anything but ordinary. It's a story of two men who built a fashion empire with their bare hands and nearly tore it all down with their own mouths. In this video, we'll take you behind the scenes of one of fashion's most controversial brands. We'll reveal the secrets that the fashion magazines won't tell you, the scandals that rocked the industry, and the untold truth of how this brand became both a household name and fashion's biggest pariah. This is the story Domenico and Stefano don't want you to hear. This is the untold truth of Dolce Gabbana. Our story begins in two corners of Italy. The sun-drenched landscapes of Sicily, where a young Domenico Dolce learns the art of a needle and thread at his father's knee. As the son of a tailor, Domenico grew up surrounded by the rhythmic hum of sewing machines and the scent of pressed fabric. Meanwhile, in the bustling streets of Milan, Stefano Gabbana dreams of making his mark in a world he barely understands. Unlike Domenico, Stefano's path to fashion wasn't as straightforward. He studied at one of the best design institutes in the world, the Istituti Marogani Design School. As is often the case with ultra-successful individuals, Stefano dropped out before ever graduating. But fate had plans for these two Italians. In 1980, the two young men, wide-eyed and hungry for success, crossed paths in a designer's studio. Sparks fly, and not just creatively. They became romantically involved. A relationship that would last for 2 decades and form the bedrock of their fashion empire. But how did two unknown designers go from sketching ideas in a tiny Milan apartment to becoming fashion royalty? Their first collection, shown in 1985, was a success. At the heart of their collection stood a piece that would define not just the show, but the entire Dolce & Gabbana aesthetic for years to come. The Sicily dress. A garment that celebrated the very essence of womanhood. Sensual yet elegant, traditional yet modern, it embodied everything Dolce & Gabbana stood for. In that moment, Dolce & Gabbana was born. But success wouldn't come easy. In those early days, they were so broke they could barely afford fabrics. Legend has it they once made an entire collection using a fabric usually reserved for making men's suits' linings. Their big break came with the 1988 Sicilian Widow collection. Black dresses, veils, and rosary beads. It was like a fashionable funeral procession. Behind the scenes, though, things were chaotic. At one of their shows, they couldn't afford professional models. So what did they do? They grabbed their friends, threw them into some designs, and pushed them onto the runway. Some of these impromptu models were so nervous that they were shaking as they walked. But you know what they say, fake it till you make it. As the 90s rolled around, the brand was on fire. They launched their first menswear collection in 1990 and rapidly expanded internationally. Dolce & Gabbana was now a name the fashion world couldn't ignore. With their growing popularity as a fashion brand, their reputation reached all the way across the Atlantic, into America and the home of the queen of pop, Madonna.
When your heart's not open.
Madonna was spotted wearing Dolce & Gabbana to the premiere of Truth or Dare.
Madonna, who designed your outfit? Dolce Gabbana.
Turning them from rising stars to global fashion icons almost overnight. The collaboration wasn't viewed as just a simple fashion moment, but rather a transformation in pop culture, with their brand now being associated with the top echelons of show business. Not only that, the partnership became one of the most iconic in fashion history, with each side amplifying the other's rebel spirit and unapologetic sensuality. Dolce & Gabbana continued their relationship with Madonna and eventually collaborated on her global tour in 1992, designing over 1,500 costumes, which helped solidify their place as the go-to designer for high-profile celebrities.
We start with Madonna, and we develop with Whitney Houston, Tina Turner, and many, Kylie Minogue, and Ben Affleck, man, woman, pop star, movie star, many more.
Later, in 1996, they introduced a diffusion line called D&G. They kept the same bold and edgy aesthetic, but added more casual and youthful elements. This helped attract a new customer base that wanted stylish quality options without the high cost associated with luxury fashion.
D&G's general aesthetic in the form of its campaigns was ultimately cultivated within this period of time. Beyond a penchant for enhancing femininity, a newfound masculine style was adopted by the duo in 1994.
The line ended up being a huge commercial success, proving the brand could appeal to both elite and mainstream markets. As the decade came to a close, their designs were seen on some of the world's biggest stars. Of course, not all their designs were hits. Remember the sandals controversy of 2016? Yeah, that happened. Dolce & Gabbana thought it would be a great idea to name a pair of shoes after, well, unsurprisingly, it didn't go over well. But more on that later. The bigger you are, the harder you fall. As the new century approached, Dolce & Gabbana continued to push boundaries, taking risks that would have a lasting impact on the world of fashion and culture. But soon enough, cracks in the facade began to show. The founders, who had been in a relationship for 23 years, decided to call it quits. For all their success, Dolce & Gabbana's journey was not without its controversies. In 2007, D&G decided to push the envelope with their spring-summer ad campaign. Now, fashion ads are known for being provocative, but this one, it crossed a line that many felt should never be crossed. The ad, a bronzed male model pins a woman to the ground by her wrists. He's shirtless, she's glamorously dressed in D&G. Around them, other male models stand watching. The woman's face is impassive, almost lifeless. When this ad hit the magazines, people lost their minds. And I'm not talking about a few angry tweets. We're talking full-on pitchforks and torches outrage. Critics weren't mincing words either. They called it a glorification of rape. Women's rights groups were up in arms. Even the Italian Advertising Self-Discipline Institute got involved, eventually banning the ad in Italy. And Dolce & Gabbana's response to all of that? They claimed the ad was meant to depict a sexual game. Because nothing says playful like a woman being forcibly restrained, right? Yikes. To add insult to injury, they initially refused to pull the ad globally. It was only after intense public pressure that they finally relented and withdrew it worldwide. This wasn't just a PR nightmare. It was a glimpse into the troubling mindset behind some of D&G's creative decisions. It left many wondering, in the pursuit of edginess and controversy, had Dolce & Gabbana completely lost touch with reality? This ad wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the beginning. And let me tell you, it gets a lot worse from here. In 2013, the Italian government accused Dolce & Gabbana of tax fraud. They found that both partners had been funneling royalties to a Luxembourg company, Gato. The allegations claimed that the designers had failed to declare over $270 million in earnings, leading to an investigation into their financial practices.
Italian fashion designers Dolce and Gabbana are the latest celebrities caught up in tax problems. A Milan court convicted Domenico Dolce and Stefano Gabbana of tax evasion. The men were found guilty Wednesday of failing to declare nearly $270 million through a Luxembourg company to Italian authorities. The court, however, acquitted them of misrepresenting income around $560 million each, even though the statute of limitations had expired on the charge. Dolce and Gabbana were both given a 1 year and 8 month suspended sentence. They were also ordered to pay about $670,000 to tax authorities. The fashion icons have denied the charges, and the defense has pledged to appeal the ruling.
Following the investigation and constant back and forth between the company and the court, the partners were convicted and sentenced to 18 to 20 months in prison with a fine of $440 million US. Dolce & Gabbana's lawyers said they would appeal the decision to Italy's highest court.
Condanna Dolce Domenico, Gabbana Stefano Silvia e Patelli Luciano alla pena di anni 1 e mesi 8 di reclusione ciascuno. Condanna gli imputati al risarcimento del danno nei confronti della costituita parte civile, Agenzia delle Entrate, da liquidarsi in separato giudizio.
Erano due cose diverse e quindi non sono in contrasto. Secondo me non dovevano, ovviamente voi direte, non doveva condannare neanche per il primo caso, perché non c'era niente. Ha ritenuto di farlo, leggeremo le motivazioni e sicuramente impugneremo in appello contro questa sentenza.
The conviction sent shockwaves through the industry. Dolce & Gabbana, once the darlings of Italian fashion, now found themselves pariahs in their own country. The designers vehemently denied the charges and appealed the conviction. Their resilience and unwillingness to back down paid off. In 2014, the conviction was overturned. Although Dolce & Gabbana were exonerated, the scandal left a stain on their once pristine image. Public sentiment turned against them as consumers and the industry reacted to their bad financial practices. But legal issues weren't the only controversies that plagued the brand. In 2015, Dolce & Gabbana found themselves in the middle of another public outrage after making controversial comments about same-sex couples and in vitro fertilization, or IVF. They referred to children born through IVF as synthetic, which was not exactly taken well. These comments prompted a response from Elton John, who has children of his own through IVF. The singer took to social media and expressed his intentions to boycott the brand, and the public soon followed.
The anger lit up social media, with parents posting pictures of their kids online and the terms synthetic baby and boycott Dolce Gabbana trending. Outrage triggered after the legendary fashion designers told an Italian magazine, "You are born and you have a father and a mother, or at least it should be like this. That's why I am not convinced by chemical children, synthetic babies, wombs for rent."
People were shocked that two openly gay designers could hold such views. A whole trend amongst families who have IVF babies started on social media with the hashtag boycott Dolce Gabbana.
For many, it came as a surprise that the two men, a former couple themselves who once spoke to Vanity Fair about wanting a family, would seem to come out against not just gay adoption, but in vitro fertilization and surrogacy.
And just when you thought D&G couldn't possibly offend anyone else, along comes the sandal fiasco of 2016. I mean, seriously, who in their right mind thought that was a good name for a product?
Well, Dolce & Gabbana always said we should express our own personal style.
During their 2016 spring-summer collection, D&G decided to unveil a colorful, pom-pom decorated sandal. Cute, right? Well, it would have been if they hadn't decided to call it the sandal on their online store. I kid you not. It's like they were actively trying to make people hate them. The backlash was swift and merciless. Social media went into a frenzy. Fashion watchdogs were calling for heads to roll. Even the Italian press, usually pretty forgiving of D&G's antics, was like, "Guys, what were you thinking?" D&G's damage control was about as smooth as their sandal was tactful. They quickly changed the name to Decorative Flat Sandal because nothing says "we messed up" quite like the blandest name possible. They also claimed it was a translation error that somehow made it past their entire marketing team. Apparently.
Somebody is lying.
The real kicker, this wasn't even the first time they'd used the term. Eagle-eyed fashion sleuths dug up instances of sandals in their 2012 and 2015 collections. It's like they had a controversial term's greatest hits album and were determined to play it on repeat. The entire sandal saga was just another reminder that for all their design genius, D&G had the cultural awareness of a brick. You've got to wonder, at this point, were they actively trying to get canceled? Most people or brands would scramble to repair the damage and restore their reputation, if only for the sake of their business. Dolce & Gabbana, though, seemed to double down. The fashion house was once again in the news in 2017 for all the wrong reasons. Their thin and gorgeous sneakers ignited a raging fire on social media. The sneakers were considered tone-deaf and inconsiderate, especially in an industry already under fire for setting unrealistic beauty standards. Critics instantly pounced on how the messaging promoted damaging stereotypes about body size and worth, in addition to alienating people who didn't meet society's restrictive concept of beauty. Again, most would apologize, but Stefano Gabbana tossed a burning matchstick into gasoline instead. The reaction was immediate, with the public demanding accountability and pushing the company to reevaluate its messaging. But by this point, it was well known that Dolce & Gabbana were unapologetic and stood firmly behind their beliefs. They continued to defend a design that many felt was a damaging endorsement of outdated expectations. Just as they thought they'd weathered the worst, another storm appeared on the horizon, this time from the east. In 2018, barely a year later, Dolce & Gabbana encountered a scandal that would seriously impair their reputation worldwide, particularly in China, one of the world's most influential luxury marketplaces. In an attempt to court the lucrative Chinese market, Dolce & Gabbana launched an ad campaign that spectacularly backfired. The ads, featuring a Chinese model struggling to eat Italian food with chopsticks, were deemed racist and insensitive by Chinese consumers. It was almost as if they wanted the reaction that followed. The backlash was swift and severe. Chinese celebrities called for a boycott of the brand. E-commerce sites pulled D&G products from their platforms. A major Shanghai fashion show meant to be D&G's triumphant entry into the Chinese market was canceled hours before it was set to begin. The situation went from bad to worse when Instagram messages from Stefano Gabbana containing offensive comments about China were leaked online. Though Gabbana claimed his account was hacked, the damage was already done. Dolce & Gabbana issued a public apology expressing their love and respect for China and Chinese culture.
In questi giorni abbiamo ripensato moltissimo, con grande dispiacere, a tutto quello che ci è successo e quello che abbiamo causato nel vostro paese, e ci scusiamo moltissimo.
But in the age of social media and cancel culture, is an apology enough? The controversy threatened to undo decades of brand building in Asia, one of the most important global markets for luxury fashion. Being locked out of this market was probably the biggest loss that the company had ever experienced. Despite their efforts to rebuild trust and repair the damage, the Chinese ad scandal remains one of the most significant mistakes in the brand's history. Thanks to this PR nightmare, Dolce & Gabbana had gone from fashion darlings to cultural outcasts. The road to redemption would not be easy. In the wake of scandal after scandal, Dolce & Gabbana found themselves at a crossroads. The brand that once dressed Hollywood's elite and dictated global fashion trends was now struggling to keep its head above water. The fallout from the China debacle was devastating. In 2018, the brand's sales in China, which accounted for nearly a third of the revenue, plummeted by 98%. You heard that right, 98%. It wasn't just China. The scandals had a ripple effect across the globe. Once loyal customers turned their backs. Celebrities who once clamored to wear D&G on red carpets now wouldn't touch the brand with a 10-foot pole. But here's the million-dollar question. Can Dolce & Gabbana bounce back? History tells us that fashion is fickle. Today's pariah can be tomorrow's darling. Just look at John Galliano's return to grace after his anti-Semitic rant. But Dolce & Gabbana's road to redemption is steeper than most. Their controversies weren't one-off incidents, but a pattern of behavior that spanned years. To their credit, the designers have been trying. They've issued apologies, donated to LGBTQ+ causes, and even tried to rebrand themselves as champions of diversity and sustainability. But in an era where consumers demand authenticity, many are left wondering, is it too little too late? One thing is clear, their story is far from over. Will they manage to reinvent themselves and reclaim their throne in the fashion world? Or will they become a cautionary tale, a reminder of how quickly empire can crumble in the face of controversy? Speaking of crumbling empires, few companies can compare the scale of controversies, damage to humanity, and evil to Monsanto. The company not only poisoned more than 3 million people, but lied about it all the way through. Click here to watch the story of Monsanto, the company that poisoned the world, and subscribe for more stories about the dark side of business.